And
You
we're
had some
on.
different things to add about
Yeah, I was just
day-to-day?
saying that, I think one of the things that was very inspiring was just the location itself, right? Between Chicago and St. Louis on Brooklyn, and there's just always this activity, right? Because it's right on the street. And, but yes, also when I walked into Self-Help Graphics, just the energy that was there, especially after the Day of the Dead. And I remember being there also for the Teatro Campesino and Evergreen, and later the Danzantes, and then you were part of Flores Atzlan, and all of that was really amazing. But one of my first experiences going there and actually I think working was I took the bus from Long Beach, and I really wanted to mention Cecilia Castaneda, who was part of Self-Help Graphics really early on as well. And so Cecilia met me, and that's when I met her. We went to Self-Help Graphics, and at the time, I think Linda was part of a show that was going to be planned. It was 1978. I had just completed the piece on Frida Kahlo, the watercolor, and it was a show. It was a show on women.
Right.
And so I believe that's why I went that day. But anyway, and that's when I first got to know the work of Barbara Carrasco. And of course, Lola, I think Lola de la Riva was also part of it. And there were
Anita Miranda.
yes, Anita Miranda. Also, Sara Pineda, who worked at Self-Help Graphics too, was there. And it was just really amazing. And that was the first time really that I had ever seen. I went to Self-Help to show also, where Sister Karen also showed a film on Frida Kahlo. One of the very earlier films on Frida Kahlo. I don't know if you guys remember that, but she showed it there one time. And so as part of I think part of the workshop that I was really interested in was the silkscreen. And so as an experiment, I printed, I think the first print that I ever did at Self-Help Graphics was just an experiment based on the composition that I did for the Frida Kahlo watercolor. And so that was,
Oh, I remember that one.
do you remember that?
It was a bleed. It was a bleed, a one-pass bleed.
No, actually there were several colors.
Was there?
Yeah, there were probably about, I don't know, 4 or 5 colors.
Do you remember, do you have a copy of that?
I do somewhere, yeah.
Somewhere? I remember that, yeah.
But anyway, so that was just.
I do. There was gold on it.
Yeah, there was gold on
Yeah.
it. But just also for me, I think part of it was just, as you said, just having that sense of collectivity and Self-Help Graphics, just that whole sense of collaboration and the energy that was there, and then that collectivity when we get ready to talk about the atelier, I really like to talk about that. And I think also just kind of that bridge between what happened at, Chicago and St. Louis on Brooklyn, and then, going into Brooklyn Engage or Cesar Chavez Engage. But it was just, it was such a wonderful, kind of introduction, to a lot of different things, and to the artists and the community, and yeah. And at the time, there really wasn't, there weren't places to go, and so Self-Help really provided, that kind of, right, that kind of grounding and base, and so it was really, I think, great in that way.
And help me understand, all of you talked about that energy and the people there, that it's inspiring, is because the places you had been before, most of you have been in school, that kind of energy wasn't happening in your,
No, not in school.
in your schools, in your art schools, in your art training.
There's no art schools there.
No connection to community, really.
No,
But
not in
Linda and I
UCLA.
were living in Long Beach, and
Right.
at the time, Lola de la Riva also had, her out of her home,
Centro.
she would have different things that were going on, and there was also a centro in East Long Beach, but not necessarily for the arts, but people like John Valadez were in Long Beach at one point, and Tony Portillo, and several different people were working at the same time that we were working there too, but nowhere like.
Teddy Sandoval.
Oh, Teddy was in Long Beach.
Teddy was in Long Beach
Oh,
too.
wow. So, but nowhere quite like Self-Help, where you kind of really brought in people from different places.
And Michael, can you share some about your first impressions of going to self-help or meeting Sister Karen?
Oh, well, yeah, I was looking for a job. I was straight out of college, and we just hit it off real good. I think Sister Karen and I were best friends because I protected her. I remember several times, you know, these brown gods would come in there with their long hair, and that time women were downtrodden. You know, women were not supposed to run an art organization. They were supposed to stay in their place. And then why was this nun over here in the middle of the barrio? And then I remember 2 times it happened. These guys, just as they were leaving the door to never come back, they'd stick their heads back in and they'd say, Sister Karen, just because of you, I don't believe in God anymore.
Just threw them upside down.
And so we'd wait a couple minutes and then we would just fall over laughing because it was such a hoot. You know, here they wanted us to, you know, lack of a better term, they wanted us to change their diapers, you know, because they were these revolutionary types. But yeah, we got along real good. I knew her mom. I helped her mom move. The only one that I didn't get along with was Sister Beth.
And why was that?
Sister Beth was an Army brat.
Okay.
And she was a very pro Anglo. And just to give you one incident, I remember we were in the middle of the floor screaming at each other because I got a degree in Mesoamerican myth and ritual.
That's right.
And she was, you know, she was an Army brat. So we're that far apart, right? And she's screaming at me and I'm screaming at her. And she was a Catholic nun too, you know, now that whole story. And so I just happened to have a rat trap in my hand. Because, you know, one of my jobs was to catch the rats at the studio, right? So without, unbeknownst to her, I cocked it back. And she just, you know, she just yelling at me. And everybody would like, just kind of look at the offices and go, oh, it's those two, right? So then I stuck it right up to her, by her female part, and I let it go, and go, snap! She goes, ah! She screamed as loud as she could. Jesus.
That's terrible.
And
Yeah,
your arguments were over religion
Over culture.
Yeah, over culture, yeah.
It were culturally based arguments.
Can you
You know.
remember one?
Well, you know, it was a time of the walkouts, you know, and she would question why the walkouts, and she would question why a lot of times she questioned why we had to teach culture, you know, stuff like that. But,
Oh,
you know,
so-
we're really good friends.
So
In fact,
the curriculum that people like Pete are involved in is precisely what she didn't understand.
No, she understood.
she understood, and she did it because she was a nun, a Franciscan nun.
And
Uh-huh.
that was
But-
her job.
Yeah, but the finer points, you know, sometimes I think I would get a little bit militant, and she was,
Well, she took care of the books.
yeah, she took care of
She
the
was
books.
into, you
And
know.
she also came on the body mobile art van.
She
a
what?
lot.
Yeah.
She came on the body mobile art van a lot too.
Yeah,
to help us.
she did the boutiquing, didn't she?
She did boutiquing and Cecilia came in. Sylvia Torres, you guys remember Sylvia Torres, our old secretary that
Yeah.
Sylvia!
Butler.
I haven't thought about her in a long
She's
time.
But we
nice.
had this amazing list of
she's now Sylvia Butler.
staff.
Sylvia with the makeup. Remember
Yeah,
Sylvia
and
with
then
all
just-
the makeup?
and
She
her
was going
Cadillac
to work
thing.
like she was going out to clubbing
She
or
had that
something.
Cadillac.
Okay, one more thing is that,
Yeah.
her dad was an officer in the Army,
Sister.
Sister
Beth.
Karen.
Sister Beth.
And we're all 3 veterans, and we're and I was non-com, you know, I was a grunt. And so we discussed that also.
Yeah, I think you're using that word loosely.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, but she was a lot of fun. I remember I lived in her house, in Sister Karen's house for a lot of times, and so Beth quit the nunnery, and so she came by one day to look at the roses because Sister Karen planted a lot of really gorgeous roses in the backyard. So she says, "Okay, I'm leaving." So we hug each other. So she goes, and makes a U-turn and comes back in front of me, and she just sticks her head out the window. She goes, "Ha ha, the Catholics won. The Catholics won. The Indians lost."
There you
And she
go.
drives away.
Yeah, there you go. See, that's what this is really about. No, that's what this is really all about.
But I don't know. It was like one thing. One time at the new place, we had a lawsuit by some of the people that rented the place for dances.
Oh, right.
And so just to give you an idea of what I did for Karen is, this lawsuit arrives, and she's frantic. So I took it and I read it to her word by word by word by word. So that was like my job. And she says, "You know what, I really appreciate you doing it." Because that was my part in Southwell Graphics. Like I say, was protecting her, taking care of stuff like that, making sure the place got closed, and we would drive by the building that finally became Southwell Graphics.
Mhm.
And we would drive by, and she'd say, "You know what, that building's going to be mine. That building's going to be mine." Because there was a deli up at the end of Atlantic and Brooklyn. There were still delis there. In fact, there was Cantor's was there.
Yeah.
And so we would drive by, and she said, "That building's going to be mine." This building. And I thought, this nuts out of her mind. So then one day she hands me the keys, and she said, "We got that building. So here's your job. You go over there and you go through the front door, and you go through every door of that building, and you mark the keys." So I'm a good soldier, right? So I open the front door, and immediately to the left there's a door. So I try all the keys, and she said, "Open all the doors." So I'm kicking. So finally I kicked the door down, and I hear a lot of noise, and I look, and there was a Catholic bookstore,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
On the
and
corner.
they had
Right.
built the shelves across the door.
Oh,
Oh, my God.
So I look in there and I see this guy. I say, "What the fuck are you doing in here?" He goes, "Well, whoa, what are you doing?" I said, "This is our building. Why are you in it?"
There was a sign, Mike.
Well, Sister Karen said, "Check all the keys." So so that was my job.
Did you have this sense of, responsibility and trustworthy? Was that something you came with?
Well, like I
Or
said,
did you develop that
we,
to grow up?
we're all three old soldiers, and we know
Okay.
by duty.
I just want to go back a little bit
Yeah.
when you guys were saying, you found South-Up Graphics, and then you had come out of school, and then out of the military, and you had found it. When I was still in high school, South-Up Graphics was there,
Right.
and I went, "Wow!" And me and Frankie were just cruising around, and I guess it was just one of those things for myself personally. In '69, I started going to a class at Otis,
Mhm.
which was based upon minority kids. And then we were just walking down the hall, me and Marty, and I see an art piece out there, big acrylic piece for the Black Student Union here.
Oh, yeah.
It was made with one of the students who had been in this class I went to
Oh, wow.
at Otis, and it was offshoot class called Saturday Tutor Art class.
Huh.
So I was a token as part of this class in '69.
Hmm.
And then in '70, the big Chicano moratorium, the war moratorium, in East LA happens. And then I see South-Up Graphics in '71. And then 71 también, the All Nations
Yeah.
was down the street, and there was Manuel Cruz.
Oh,
You know?
yeah. Right.
Remember, you can't forget Mr. Cruz. ¿Verdad?
Is he still around?
Yeah, he's still
That's
somewhere around.
amazing.
Carlos was
that
doing his
is.
mural up there.
And then Mexicano,
Mm-hmm.
so there was other
right, that's
entities
Oh, yeah.
that were
Mexican.
going on, so there
Definitely.
was stuff
Yes.
going on.
Yeah.
The Stradley
You know,
Forge.
and then I come across Almaraz
Yeah.
at the Mexicano, and he goes, "Hey man, you should come over and see me at Frank's house," and and then that relationship started, and then
Also, the Centro de Arte Público in Highland Park, when did that
Right.
start? Like,
77, I think it was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
actually.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
We opened it up.
76,
Yeah,
77.
that's when we printed those things for that '77 show.
So it's kind of like
at
the whole
South Al.
burgeoning Chicano Studies Department stuff that was happening in the universities levels was sort of pouring over the
Yeah.
top,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Affecting the community, and then little itty bitty groups were kind of coming together, and Karen caught some of that synergy, and then everything just sort of what critical mass.
Yeah,
like
let
the
me tell you
Not all
something
that
about,
stuff was coming out of not all of it was coming out of like school. A lot of it was
Yeah.
emerging from community, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
well,
Yeah,
let me say something about Manuel Cruz. Back in the day, you know, he was really good. Yeah, and he did the sculptures. He got blocks of wax, and he sculpted with a magnifying glass in the sun.
Whoa.
And then he had what was that group in Highland Park?
Public Art Center?
Yeah. And they he had them cast somehow or other. You know, he was a hustler at that time. He had them cast in bronze, and that was the last place that I saw the pieces. But they were it was art,
Mm-hmm.
and he had like about 4 or 5 of them in there,
Oh, right, bro, yeah.
bronze.
I
They're
want-
out there someplace.
Yeah, the curriculum that you've shared, Peter, is pretty amazing. And if this is from the Barrio Mobile Art Studio, I mean, Fernando Morse
Amazurrutia.
Amazurrutia is doing sculpture, drawing, etching, layout, painting, lithography, silkscreen. Carlos Bueno is doing painting, drawing, silkscreen. Victor Dubois is doing filmmaking and photography.
He's a producer.
Jeff Gates is doing photography, printmaking, silkscreen. Linda Orozco, batik, bread dough sculpture, clay sculpture, drawing, jewelry making, origami, painting, printmaking, puppetry, silkscreen, murals. That's the first time that word has shown up with Southbound. And Jesse Raya is silkscreen layout and filmmaking. Peter, you're listed as sculpture, painting, calligraphy, drawing, jewelry making, layout. And then Carla Weber. I don't think you've said anybody's brought up Carla's name.
No.
Batik, photography, printmaking, and fabric sculpture. And she's born in Mexico and had been studying at Immaculate Heart College. So
This was like 74 through 75, the
Yeah,
school year,
this
74,
yeah.
75.
That's
She,
what's-
Carla's in that one picture that.
Yeah,
Mike
Carla's
has
here.
You need to blow that.
I think maybe she had an affiliation with the school and Corita Kent, because Karen was like a student of Corita Kent.
Yes, she was.
So there may have been
Yeah,
that
she went
connection.
Carla
to,
Weber.
With the
she
church.
She went to
taken on
Marymount.
Merit, or whatever it is.
Marymount.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
there you go.
Yeah, Marymount.
Yeah, that's where she went to.
I wanted to talk about my memories of the upstairs on 2111 and just kind of run it across everybody and see if we couldn't kind of like put together a picture of it. Because I don't think there's many photographs of the studio itself. I know there's photographs of the gallery, because I took a few of those shots myself. And I have those, and I gave them the self-help graphics and some to the the historical paper here at UCLA. But I remember, okay, so let's see if I got it right. You walked up this really long, wide set of stairs, right? What would you say it's about?
3 flights.
3 flights.
But no, what, it actually wrapped around, or did it just go
Yeah,
straight up?
1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
It-
so I think it was the third floor.
It wrapped around, but it was wide, as I
Yeah,
remember, and it was
because
kind of dark.
It was a dance hall before.
Oh, is that what it
A lot
was?
of steps.
Okay.
It was a lot of steps, it was wide and it was dark. I remember there wasn't like a lot of good lighting in there.
Wood.
And really dark wood on the stairs, and I don't remember us ever hanging any artwork in there because it was so dark.
We did it one time when we had the first kids' Day of Dead show, cause I hung the show.
Oh,
You
yeah.
hung
I
something up there in the
started-
hallway.
I started it from the bottom and took it all.
On
way-
the stage, right, Peter?
No.
No, up the stairs, we're talking
up
about
the
up the
stairs.
Oh,
stairs.
upstairs.
Just up the stairs. We
Yeah, I
didn't,
took up the stairs around
I
them,
don't remember us
and then
hanging
we
it.
did it in,
Lighting.
we had like a little
'Cause you couldn't
room or
get a s-
gallery or something like
Yeah,
that.
and you couldn't get a ladder up there for anything because it was like this really steep set of stuff that went up there. It was dark, it was scary, it was spooky. I didn't want to go up there at night. That's how I felt about it.
And I think that's why the gallery popped up, and then Ron came in and did the
And
lighting.
Did the lighting.
Yeah.
Ta-da.
Oh, okay. And then there was a set of,
Otra vez.
this is it, there was a set of gates, metal gates that were sliding gates with a big lock on it, right, Mike?
Right. Front
I
door.
remember that.
That was the
That
front
was the
door?
front door, because you could walk
Oh, front
in.
door, yeah.
Okay.
There was the door downstairs on the street was a pretty small regular door like this, right? Then you walked in and there was this big set of stairs that went up 3 flights. Then there was like this big closing metal door with a big lock on it that Mike was responsible for the lock because he was protecting Karen. Now that's the other thing I wanted to say is that Beth thought she was protecting Karen too. And I know that's where half of those fights came from. Because they were like fighting over Karen's being, in her attention.
And you guys were
And the
over
rest of us
there.
just sort of said, well, if somebody dies,
Let me
what
ask
are we
you
gonna
guys-
do with
Let me
them?
ask you this: I know when I finally saw Sister Karen again in '80
Uh-huh.
at the new location, there was Jacoby.
The dog.
The
dog.
dog, oh, that little dog, that terrible little dog.
Hey, wait a minute.
The mutt.
He was a saint.
He was a Saint Jacoby.
But did he show up at at the other location
At-
No.
as a little
No.
pup?
No.
Wasn't he at their house and they never brought him?
Oh, wow.
No, I never saw
You never saw the dog until he
Interesting.
hit him.
Jacoby.
Jacoby, that's a
Jacoby.
good one.
I have a
Yeah,
photo
He was
or
one of
something
those
of him.
part poodle
He
things.
was a cute little
Mud.
dog.
Mutt, little mutt.
Cockapoo or
Okay, so
something
let me
like that.
finish. So you get to the top of the stairs, right? Here you are at the top of the stairs. Come on, you guys, help me remember. You get to the top of the stairs, and basically there's a really long, wide, rectangular room in front of you with a stage at the very back.
Mhm.
On the far left-hand side was a whole set of sinks, right? They were
Oh,
like
yeah.
those kind of
Sinks, yeah.
low working sinks, remember?
Oh.
Right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but there was partition offices too.
Yeah, oh yeah, I mean, I'll get there,
Yeah.
I'll get there. Then on the right-hand side, there was the administrative offices were right on the right-hand side. Karen's office was like right in the middle with the partitions. The printing studio was in the middle, in the back, right in front of the stage. And you could walk up the stage, up the sides, right? And then in the middle were the partitions for all the artists. And there was kind of like this space where we would have our meetings, these endless meetings, right there next to where Karen was. Am I remembering pretty good? The only thing I can't remember is where were the bathrooms?
The gallery, remember the gallery?
Yeah, I do, I'll get there, but
The
where
gallery
were the
was,
bathrooms?
Oh, yeah,
the gallery
the
was
gallery.
next to the bathroom.
Yeah,
Oh.
Mhm.
right.
So then, when you walked up the stairs and you ended right there, you looked ahead to the whole studio space, and then the gallery was kind of around the corner and went this way, right? And it was like a
gorgeous
big
gallery.
square room, a giant
Mhm.
square room.
Yeah.
Was
That
it
faced
self-contained or
Brooklyn.
was it?
Space Brooklyn, didn't
It-
it?
It faced
Yeah,
Brooklyn,
Brooklyn.
Yeah.
with windows, it had windows.
No, when I came up, I remember there was more stairwell to go up to the roof. Then I had to give a left turn, and then there was the doorway to
Oh,
the
that's
gallery.
possible, that's possible.
Then the big doorway, and then when I went there, I remember it
Oh,
was
there was a hallway, you're right. You
Yeah.
took a left, you went up to the roof like this, or you took a left, and then you could either take a right or a left.
and then straight ahead was that
You're
photo panel
right.
thing, and then that's where I went and did. Were
The
teaching me how to-
sinks.
that and the burner for the screen printing.
Yeah, that was all there. We had a squirt gun to squirt
Yeah,
down all
just-
the.
Yeah.
And the silk screening stuff was right in the back, right in the middle, a giant table, looked like a ping pong table.
Well, I just remember it as opening that, to the big hallway, and then Karen was over there, and then the screen printing was back on that,
Right.
on the right side, not in the middle.
Yeah, but straight in the back though, on the right hand side.
Yeah,
All the way to the back
exactly, and
by
then
the.
Yeah, and then the stage was up there.
So what I have in the notes that I've seen is as early as '73 they're doing exhibitions in that space.
I think the first time I
So-
remember doing an exhibition in that space, well, Pete said that they
77.
did, in
Was it
'75, they
for
did an
the kids?
exhibition of the kids.
I think it was a children's
And the Day of the
exhibit.
Dead. And the
Yeah.
first exhibitions we had in 70, probably what, Mike, since what, like say early 76, after we went out to the Body Mobile Art Studio once or twice, or at the end of the year, probably in June of 76, we had a series of exhibitions of the kids' work, sculpture, and all the body, because we didn't just go to elementary schools for the Body Mobile Art Studio at that point either. The California Arts Council had Mike and I going out with a group of other artists too, but we were basically the mainstays on the van, to senior citizen centers, alternative high schools. We did alternative high schools in East Los Angeles, and we did a lot of elementary
I
schools.
remember it was a struggle getting the parents up there.
Yeah, we couldn't get an audience really. That was really the hardest part.
And I
And-
remember the children's art exhibit, because my son was 5 years old. And I took him to it, and remember Los Lobos played?
Los Lobos
Los
played?
Lobos played.
I didn't remember that.
Yes,
Sure,
because
I
you
was
know the
busy
tallest
labeling
one, I
things or
can't
something.
remember his name, the tall one, the one that.
David or
The singer.
David?
David.
Yeah, I think it's David, knew Sister Karen real well.
Los Lobos were
And Los
there.
Lobos played for the children's art exhibit.
What a treat.
And I remember my son sitting down on the floor, with his legs crossed, and he just was hypnotized.
I remember that we had articles in local newspapers with the exhibitions for the children. La Opinion was very friendly to us at that point and was doing
Frank
lots of articles.
Delomo.
Frank
Yeah.
Delomo.
And then
Yeah.
before, yeah, it was Frank Delomo. He always wrote an article about something.
He always came by and they had, I remember photographs in the newspapers, and I remember Sister Karen was very specific about exhibitions that had integrity. So that you not only produced work that the children were proud of, but you also exhibited it in a way that
Yeah.
establish the self-esteem, because that was one of the buzzwords in the nonprofit
We
arena
had
at
to
that point.
mat some of the drawings or, and
Wow.
places of sculptures.
Yeah, that's why the gallery was so gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a gorgeous space.
It was a beautiful space, and Ronnie built that really, it was like a hanging light
Mhm.
fixture, really beautiful hanging light fixture.
But Marty's memory from '74, seeing Carlos Bueno's work on the wall around Christmas, that matches the documents I've seen. That had to have been in that same gallery
Space, yes.
space, but
Yeah.
that's before,
The Vadio Mobile Art Studio.
but it's also before the lighting gets put in there.
Yeah.
No, but
Yeah,
that
that was
that
before the
artwork you're
lighting was
talking
put
about
Yeah,
is the artwork that he has in that photograph on the stage.
oh,
Maybe
okay.
that's what you're,
Las Novias del Pueblo.
because he had that big
Well, the
painting
show
on the
Las
stage.
Novias del Pueblo, I have dated from June '73, but I guess that's the earliest one I
That's
have.
what, and then he,
That's Carlos Bueno and Antonio Ibanez is what I had seen. And the show you see, I'm assuming it's the same, is Carlos Bueno in December '74. If you said you walked in and it was all his artwork.
well, not, but that
So
isn't.
it sounds like they're exhibiting and then it keeps developing. We do. Okay, okay, great.
Never came back.
Or we
He had-
just-
He just off the face of the earth.
yeah, always- she was always asking,
Oh, they found him? Where'd they find him?
no,
He
I
was
don't-
teaching at Berkeley all that time.
really?
He was teaching at
He just
Berkeley?
up and went, left all his equipment, he had some really expensive equipment. He was our documenter.
I remember the police used to come every once in a while,
Looking for him.
not looking for him. Sister Karen was always having somebody look for him.
She was what?
I remember that.
She was worried about him.
Yeah, that was weird.
You guys, how did, I always, never get the story straight. First of all, why was it called self-help graphics? I mean, I think I know why, but the Galeria otra vez?
Otra
The
vez,
names, yeah.
That was
Carlos said,
Antonio.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to get it out of the way.
Carlos said, let's call it Otra vez, because we're gonna do another show, we're gonna do another show, we're gonna do another show.
Oh, that's good.
I'll fill that one.
I always liked that name.
And
Yeah.
Sister Karen hated the name self-help graphic,
I know, she regretted it the minute she gave it that name.
but,
What?
yeah, she hated that name,
Why?
because she, I don't know why, she just hated it.
Probably should have been Spanish, Spanish name.
But she felt at the same time, it would be good for the artists, cause you come together here and you help yourself, you know.
But how did the name, who suggested it? Was it Karen or?
Mhm,
It was
Sister
Karen.
Karen.
I think it tells you it bespeaks, it bespeaks Sister Karen's attitude in terms of establishing self-help graphics. It might even tell you it might indicate some of the reasons why she actually established it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very particular word to that time, self-help.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
to that time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Everything was help yourself, help yourself, self-help, self-help.
But she felt you perhaps, I mean, how did you know she didn't like the name, is I guess the.
Because
She
you
always
told
said
us.
it.
She said so.
You tell you.
She used
Oh,
to
I
say
wish I
it.
hadn't chosen that name.
You
I wish
remember
it
her?
was a better name. I could say. You can't change it now because she's already incorporated and everything.
I remember speaking to Sister Karen once, and I asked her, "Where did the title to the gallery come from?" And she said, "There was this guy used to work here before. Every time he walked in the door, he'd go, Otra vez, otra vez." You know.
Well, that must be
And I don't know.
He could have missed him.
Linda, tell them the fly story.
What fly story?
Sister Karen, remember that incredible shrinking man?
No, you tell it.
Oh. We would prompt her. Did you ever see the movie The Incredible Shrinking Man? And at one point, he shrinks down real small like this. And there's a fly after him. And remember, and we would say, "Come on, Karen, do it." So she'd get on the floor and she'd go, "Help me."
It was the fly, it was the fly.
Yeah.
I still have this memory.
She'd get on the floor and do it.
She was everything you wouldn't expect. She was the nun that you didn't expect. She
Yeah.
had a really wry and dry sense of humor. She's a visionary. she had plans. And she really appreciated artists and loved being an artist herself. I have a memory, and it's just a little piece, it's like a little snapshot of a memory of the meetings that we would have in her office at 2111 Brooklyn, where she would be sitting behind the desk, and Pius would be in there, and Beth would be in there, and Mike would be in there, and everybody would just be sort of talking about what we, it was kind of like she was always strategizing and included the artists in the strategy conversation.
Mm-hmm.
She was always like, so now what do we do? How are we gonna do this? And suddenly you'd be drawn into this conversation about how something was gonna take place. And I remember enjoying that. You know, like almost as if you got a hand in what self-help graphics was going to become and how it was going to work and what was going to be accomplished. Karen was always drawing those meetings, like you said, where she was asking people to think about what we could do or how we would do it or, you know, what would be accomplished. I remember the first time I met Sister Karen, I went in for my interview. I was at Cal State University Long Beach getting my MFA, and I was looking for a job like the rest of us. And David Starr, David Starr was in the ceramics department at Cal State University Long Beach, and we made friends. And I told him I was looking for a job. He says, oh, there's this center up in Los Angeles called Self-Help Graphics. They're looking for somebody. Why don't you go check it out? And I had this really rickety Volkswagen, really old red Volkswagen that I used to drive around. I didn't have any heat or anything like that. And I drove up to LA with 3 portfolios. I had a spring portfolio, a summer portfolio, and a fall portfolio, because I would actually work in sections and do like one idea over a series of months and do the next idea. And I remember being pretty scared when I first met Karen. I wanted the job. I was what? I think I was 25 at the time. I was pretty young. I'd never had like an art job before, and I really wanted it. And I remember being nervous and meeting Karen. And Mike, do you remember anything about my interview?
Yeah, I remember we were tripping out how, you know, we were all hippies, and then here you come all dressed up like a successful corporate lawyer.
Was she wearing heels and stockings?
Oh, you should have seen her.
But she was a hippie in school. I mean, I did
It was a job
15
interview.
hours of
Yeah, of
interview
course.
with her. She walked around naked half the time.
Not this day.
Did it impress you? Or,
No, we thought it was funny.
And there's one thing Mike's right about us being hippies, because we really knew how to party.
Baby. Is it true?
You guys partied?
Remember Carla? Remember Carla? What do you remember about Carla? See if I might correct
She
you.
was
sir.
just a tough, big girl, and you know, just didn't talk very much at all. Party.
Okay, I remember we would have the meetings in the gallery,
She'd swear a lot.
and we would sit in a circle, and all the guys would wait until she went and sit down. That way we could sit in front of her, because she used to like to pull her skirt up.
Oh yeah, okay.
Remember that?
This is always my thing. This is
Yeah.
fine.
What's a guy thing? I mean, you know.
Yeah, Carla's tough.
Don't put that in the documentation,
I know, well,
please.
no, go ahead, do it.
Why
Do it.
not?
Go ahead, do it.
Oh,
being
yeah.
honest.
I remember one of my first experiences of the
She's not
Day
here
of the
to
Dead.
defend herself, first of all.
She's not here to defend
I don't
herself.
think it was cool.
That's, you go
Well-
for it, Dana. I remember one of the first Day of the Dead that I was present, and I'd like you to help me remember who was there. I think I asked Ron about it the other night, and he thinks he remembers being there. And so I figure it was 1977. 1977, 1976, you know, help me figure it out. And I remember there was more than one altar, but I can't really remember, except for the central altar is what I do remember. And it was very traditional. It had like, we took like pedestals and put one on top of the other, so it was like a step fret altar kind of a feel to it. Really old fashioned folky, like you talked about, Marty. And there was like papel picado kind of draped, you know how they do it like this, the draping like this, and like the pinks and the light blues. And there was like, it was kind of lacy and kind of, it looked like a big cake. Kind of like a big cake if I remember it, with like little, like cut, like it was whites and pinks and yellows. And it didn't have the palm fronds at this point, as I recall. It was if I remember correctly, it was the middle of the, help me remember, Mike, it was in the middle of the the space,
Mm-hmm.
and we
For the
put
gallery.
food, everybody brought food, it was really home style. It wasn't like the Day of the Dead, it was more like in your home, Dia de los Muertos. Everybody brought pictures of their familia, their own familia, and we put it on the altar. And we had, somebody made enchiladas, I made mole, I remember, and, cause it didn't work out the way I wanted it to. And we actually cooked and had comida, and we had a table that we ate at. We all sat down like a familia and ate at the table. And we had a prayer before we ate, in which we made a circle, and there was a pepetero in the center. Mike brought the pepetero, and we burnt sage. And Sister Karen said a prayer, and Mike said a prayer. And then we all sat down and ate dinner together. Does anybody remember this?
Yeah, I remember that.
What do you remember
wasn't
about, what do you remember about it, Mike? Was it 76 or was it,
Well, I don't remember the year.
what else do you remember about it though?
Just what you said, that it was in the center,
Mm-hmm.
and the photographs, I remember the photographs of everybody.
So this was an event for the folks who worked?
Mm-hmm.
This was our
It
day
wasn't
of
like
the dead.
a,
This wasn't,
public.
yeah, nobody came. It was just us.
We had a lot of those.
It's like a circle, like 12 people.
Because people did it in their homes at that time.
But we were just starting it. That's
Yeah.
what my recollection is. It was just beginning. It was even before Teatro Campesino came and did the big thing. It was before the parking lot event. It was before the desfile even took place.
I think it was 76.
I think it was a part of that NEH grant thing that we were working on, where we kind of took it to heart and did all of our research, and then actually held our own celebration of the Dia de los Muertos to be able to, imbue ourselves with the sense of it. I'm sure you were there, Marty. Do you remember? I'm sure you were there.
I think I was there.
I wasn't there.
I think
know,
I
'cause
was.
One of the things I did, me and Sister Karen had a big old argument.
Everybody, Karen argued with everybody.
No, but I was,
I had a big old argument with
but I was out of
Karen.
the service, I was very anti
Can I get another piece?
everything, I was just, I had anger management
I don't
problems.
care.
Mhm.
So when I got mad, I really got mad. And I quit.
you
I
did?
quit, yeah, I quit.
I remember that, Peter.
And,
You remember that he quit?
Thank you.
yeah, then they hired a new teacher, whoever that person was. Could've been you,
Could have been me.
could've been you. Mm.
Definitely Karen was a
But-
force to contend with, right? She
Yeah,
was
yeah.
all
She-
that positive stuff that also.
And you know
was a
what the
force to
funny
contend
thing is?
Oh, yeah.
When I came back in '84, I said, Sister Karen, do you remember what we argued about that time? Because I hadn't.
She
I hadn't
couldn't
seen her.
remember.
remember.
She couldn't remember?
She
I
probably
couldn't
didn't
remember.
want to remember.
We couldn't remember what we argued about.
She was sort of dedicated to the idea that it wasn't going to be an easy road to hoe.
She gave me a little studio space after that. We had a studio space, remember you and Robert, and Patsy was downstairs.
I
Mike
Robert
was,
upstairs.
Mike was there.
Robert Delgado?
Delgado, yeah. And then, remember we realized we were all doing stencil work somehow? You were working with some kind of stencils, Tito was working with stencils, I was working with like stencils and. So I think Arturo,
I want to
was
ask
there
you
at the time.
questions.
Yeah.
I have to ask
Yeah.
Marty a question, because you had said before lunch that artists would come up with this idea to be more commercial,
Oh, yeah.
and you said, Sister Karen,
She would always say, we're not a business. That's not my mission. That's not the mission of Suffolk Graphics.
were those arguments the way you're describing these other arguments, or was it around the table when you had
was
these
a-
meetings like,
It would be in discussion.
uh-huh,
Somebody would come up with an idea, and we finally did get an idea that she agreed to, and that was the atelier.
And I think
Really?
one of the real interesting points about that atelier is that I did a print there, the second print I think it was, Bocas Corazon, and I had already an affiliation with the B1 Gallery with Robert Berman, and he came over to Southouth Graphics, the new Southouth Graphics, in 3802 Brooklyn Avenue, and he bought the collection.
You know, you make
He
it
bought the
big.
edition of prints.
From
And
the-
from Southwood Graphics.
what do you mean the addition, that atelier, that year's worth of,
That print that I did,
okay,
the second
The whole
atelier,
edition. he
in
bought.
'84.
Oh, yours.
In
Oh, okay.
'84,
wow.
and he bought the edition, and then Sister Karen, had me in there like, don't bring those son of a bitches over here to buy the prints. They're for the people to come in and buy. Now, no one's gonna be able to go to the west side to go buy one of your pieces because they're gonna charge so much for it.
Oh, that was before the deal with the 50-50?
No, that was a
That's
50-50
probably-
deal.
We always did that.
That started that way.
Oh, really?
50-50.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Then how'd he buy the whole thing?
Because he came over and said, hi,
I got some money.
and I told him, I brought him over. I said, hey, Sister Karen said, oh, great, money.
Money.
Then when it was gone, she goes,
Oh, I blew it.
ah,
That reminded me of a
Come here, Leo.
conversation.
what happened? Don't bring anybody else here to buy prints like this because we don't want to sell to the west side.
That reminded me of a conversation.
We want to sell it to the people so they can have their own art within the community. Because if you recall, we started the print atelier. I'm very, very 50-50. What was it? 50-50.
You got half
Paper.
the edition, right?
Yeah.
Right. No. What I mean is 50-50. The paper was real flimsy.
Oh, right.
Right. The
Oh, yeah,
first. Remember that one, Irena?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I did the Dando
Yeah,
Gracias.
And
And we printed our name on the bottom. It had all
The
this
whole
information on
did
it,
some
like a
print.
poster.
I wanna make
It wasn't just a print
Uh,
with the edition number, the title, and the year, and then we made the chop.
I remember
Up to
though
the
when
30th,
Sister
that's
Karen
what they
said,
print
Sister Karen, we were talking about, because somebody came in the office and said they wanna go buy some prints. So we took him in there, this is the mural place, so we took him in there and he went through the prints and he took one, and he only had like $25, right? Well, we were selling the prints for like $150. But Sister Karen said, yeah, you can go ahead and have it. Then she whispered, after he's gone, she told me, you know what, Peter? Really, since it's a donation kind of thing, we're a nonprofit, if somebody gave me $1, I would legally have to take that dollar and sell them Frank or Merrill or whoever it was. She said, don't tell anybody that way. Of course I wouldn't do that.
There's a couple of names I would like to say before we move on too, because I need to make sure I say these names too. One of us, Alfredo de Batuc.
Oh, yeah.
Alfredo de Batuc couldn't make it today because it's very hard for him to travel these days. He becomes very tired very quickly. I did speak to him, or actually Facebooked him, and he wrote me back several times. But Alfredo de Batuc designed the Day of the Dead poster that I pulled in '78. And I designed a Day of the Dead poster and pulled it in 1977. And I also remember that John Valadez was there, I believe in 1977, maybe 1976, and he pulled that, I pulled the print for him, which was the Sacred Heart of Jesus.
Yeah, that was great.
The Sacred Heart of Jesus. The one by Alfredo de Batuc you'll remember because it's that sort of an egg-shaped design with the two happy figures in the middle and a very dark blue like that, a Prussian blue, and the last layer was Prussian blue. I remember we were freaking out over that. And there was another print as well that took place. Oh, John Valadez. Richard Duardo was around in those early years because I remember him being there as a printmaker. He was just then, getting out of school like the rest of us and starting his whole routine. And what happened in the back room in the print area, the silkscreen print area in the back of the studio was kind of like an open space for artists to come and do things. That's how I recall it. Am I recalling it right? Like John Valadez simply showed up with an idea, asked Sister Karen if it could be printed, and suddenly the paper showed up and the ink showed up. Is that correct? Nobody was paying to print at that point. I know Richard was around because I know he and Mike used to just crack everybody up with their jokes, all this stuff going on in the studio. But those are, and I remember the story that I wanted to share about Alfredo de Batuc. I remember him distinctly, and I think he worked on the Valle Mobile Art Studio for a stint. Did he?
I don't
Did he?
think so.
I don't
I don't
remember him
remember.
being on it.
He was an artist that just walked in with ideas from Mexico, and he ended up designing one of the Day of the Dead posters. And I think he designed more than one. I think there's two of them that he designed during those early years. And he was there for a long time, but he was there really early, like in '75. Because I remember we were pulling prints of like, what do you figure, an edition of 50 maybe.
At the most.
There was no place to go with them. I mean, we had a very small community at that point. I mean, I can't even imagine what we did with the posters. Unfortunately, there's very few of them left at this point. but Alfredo told me the story of his hometown that was washed away by a flood. His whole hometown was washed away by a flood. And he was like this homeless artist that ended up at Self-Help Graphics.
And that's where his name comes from.
Yeah, de Batu.
The Batuque is the name of the town, and it was simply just washed away. The whole thing, when he was a child, I think he was 7 years old or something, and I never forgot that story because he was really devastated by it. When he showed up, it was he needed to share the memory of this devastation, and I remember when he was at Self-Help Graphics, it was very emotional for him.
Mhm.
Oh, and I also printed some, I was doing my MFA in printmaking at Cal State Long Beach, and I actually did some monotyping printing in the back on top of some photo lithos that I had been doing at the university.
Yeah.
So my memory is that Karen was pretty much like, this is your place.
Definitely.
Like you can come, you're welcome, you can come. But there was a lot of rules and regulations in the sense that you had to,
Put the paints back, put
Yeah.
the brushes back.
you had to be
over there.
respectful of the space and all that stuff, but there was like this desire to start bringing people together to make things happen.
So how did you get permission to use it as a studio space? Because I'm just thinking in contrast to Centro Art, Public Art Center, you paid some of the rent, you got key. So what happened at Self-Help,
Well, I know for me, I was working there anyway.
right?
So there was projects, maybe you remember I used to do the plaster sculptures. Remember I was doing the carving out plaster sculptures? We were gonna have a show at the Mark Taper Center in that area, Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. And I'd go in there, I'd bring my sculptures out of plaster, because we were doing that with the kids. And I'm thinking, hey, you know what, I think I can do a big version of something nice that I would like. And I'd go in there and carve, she just lets you do
It was like an
whatever.
open studio.
Yeah, she let you do whatever.
The print too,
There's
the
a lot-
color print was, I also just went in there and printed it myself.
Yeah, there's a lot of times when you just come in, and if you're not working today, go in anyway and do what you can, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's what kind of happened, is that we just sort of started showing up. And the space was open, all you had to do was ask permission. Say, Karen, I have this idea, I'd like to do this print, can I do it here? And suddenly it was just open like that. I remember being there in the afternoons, in the early evenings. I remember being there and printing, maybe after the Vadio Mobile Art Studio was done. I think our hours were pretty much all day though, I think we pretty much didn't come back till school closed. So it would be like that in the early evening that we would actually be doing other art projects ourselves.
Oil-based paints. Remember they were all oil-based paints?
Oh, we had that huge fan.
Well,
We had that
Oh.
giant fan.
Everybody
Remember the
get
giant
high
fan?
now. It was terrible.
And who was working in oil-based paints?
Everybody was.
Oh, because that
Everything was
at the
oil-based.
time.
Everything
There
was
was no
oil-based.
water-based, there was no
Yeah.
water-based stuff.
And
And so it was solvents and all that stuff.
Oh, and what was even worse is, I found out later, is that you guys had an arc exposure unit.
Yeah,
Yep.
Oh,
That
yeah.
just let, how dangerous is that?
the fumes.
The fuels from arc lamps to shoot
To shoot
screen
the
prints.
photo, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the worst. I mean, it's like,
I remember, and
tell
it-
him, Mike, you're a welder.
Are we alive here?
I know.
It's a miracle, huh?
and it had this really bad noise, right? Oh, that's right. It
Thought
was
Mike
like,
was back there.
That's probably why Richard Duarte doesn't have any hair left.
Yeah. He's not here to defend himself.
and you're right, and it had like the electricity that would come out of the top.
Oh,
I
God,
remember
it was
that.
a trip.
I remember
The
that now.
smoke.
And the smoke.
So it got on everything inside there.
Yeah.
But nobody was really like,
we
And
were-
then,
just
and
like
then
a-
Sister Karen would be smoking too.
oh
Ooh,
yeah,
Mike's was
oh
just
yeah.
toxic.
Miracle y'all survived.
But I kind of find the Sister Karen too when I'd come up to her and she was just sitting there, right? And then it's like it was nice, we could sit down, we'd say a few words. It was so nice. And then when she'd go like this, all right, the cigarette lit her up, just like, all right. Let's talk. Remember that when she would light a cigarette? Oh, look, I could tell. You knew Karen was gonna
Wow,
lay it on you
I
because.
forget it if she called you into her office.
Oh.
I wanna say no.
Oh.
And then she had a cigarette lit already.
I was in trouble.
Sit down. Let's talk.
What do you get in trouble for?
Don't wanna get into it.
I mean,
That is not for documentation.
Ideological, or is it, you
Yeah,
know,
sometimes.
being
Yeah.
irresponsible adult, you didn't clean up the
No,
papers
no,
and stuff?
ideological.
Really?
Oh, yeah, occasionally. I mean, you know, she's a human being, she had strong
Right.
opinions.
She liked
So we
it
don't-
though.
Well, I'm curious because are you having these debates with other artists, or is it only with her? You know, are these things that everybody's debating? Or?
Yeah, I would say, cause I lived in Silver Lake at the time too, and I'd get a lot of artists coming over to my house.
Mhm.
And we'd have all these philosophical discussions about art and then go to work, you know, self-help the next day or whatever. And continue with other people that weren't at my apartment. And like Antonio and Carlos didn't speak any English. I didn't speak Spanish. But somehow or another, we always knew what we were trying to say to each other, you know? I mean, we were such good friends. I mean, he was just a great guy.
Carlos?
She would
Yeah,
also get
Carlos.
upset about if you didn't do your curriculums.
It was
Yeah, you had to
administrative,
do
there
it
was
right.
administrative
Yeah.
stuff. There was
You had to do those
administrative.
curriculums right.
And then she finally got to the point where you wouldn't get paid unless you did your curriculums.
Yeah, that's right, and you had to turn them in by a certain day.
You know, I still have one of my paycheck stubs.
Oh, yeah?
It's a stipend, right? So it's
Yeah, right, it is
$3.75 something an hour back in 75.
Yeah, I think we
I
made
still
like
have it.
8,000 a year.
It was really bad.
I think it was 8,000 a year, I think that's what the grant was. I had mine for 3 years in a row.
I know we couldn't work over so many hours, cause then it would be, you know, whatever, full-time, whatever, but so we had to work only so many hours.
Yeah. Another thing you guys aren't mentioning is that Karen lived in the community
Yeah.
as
she
a
did.
young lady
That's right.
up in City Terrace.
Right.
And, you know, still her mom and that whole thing was still existing back then. And then I guess it was when she passed away when we saw the memory boards, you know, of all these photos. She was a beauty queen
Oh, yeah.
and these other things. There's some
Oh, I
sailor
remember
guy.
her when
and-
she was invested as well as a nun. I remember photographs of Karen when she was invested.
Yes.
I remember that
Oh, yes.
photograph. She
Yes,
was
yes.
very beautiful.
Yeah, I have one of those photographs.
You have one of those
She looked like a
photographs?
flying nun.
Yeah.
Was it one of those larger headdresses?
Yeah, because,
Well, no.
you know, her dad was Jewish, right?
Mm.
And her mom was Italian.
Her name
Is
was
that right?
Carmen.
I never knew
Her
that.
name was Carmen.
Garmin.
And in the
Carmen.
neighborhood, it started out being immigrant Jews,
Right.
and then it went to Italian.
Yeah.
There's still Italian craftsman homes up in there.
Yeah.
And then it went Japanese,
Yeah.
and then it went Mexicano, and now it's changing. East LA is changing
Central
into
Americans.
Chinese.
But her
Oh,
dad was
right.
Jewish.
Very, very
Her
fast.
last name was Bocanero though, right?
Yeah.
So he was Jewish? Jewish Italian?
He took her mom's name.
Oh, okay.
And then Sister Karen also had this love for gardens.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's
Oh.
that other
That
thing.
rose garden, the rose garden Mike was talking about.
But yet again,
Vegetables.
I remember when I did show up in 1980 over there. You know, she'd go, "Okay, hey, let's go out for lunch. You drive." So I would drive the car. You know, we'd go to have sushi
Mhm.
over there on First Street.
Tomisa.
So see, or she'd go, "Wait, let's turn here and see the gardens." She'd go, "Oh, look it, look it." Because you know, again, in her backyard, she had, oh God,
Yeah.
you know what a
Towards
garden.
the end of her life, I would go upstairs, and I'd say, "Okay, let's go," and so we would walk for at least an hour and a half. That was the only time she wouldn't smoke because I did not allow her to smoke when I was with her. But as soon as she got back in the office, she fired one up.
I remember being really shocked. Sister Karen lived on that house. What was the name of Sister Karen and Sister Beth lived together on that.
City Terrace.
In City Terrace, but what was the name of the street? Anybody
Rowan.
remember? Was it Rowan? Up the hill on Rowan, on the east side of the street. I remember that. And Karen lived. The convent only gave Karen something like $35 a month for spending cash. She had the house, and she had that was a station wagon, wasn't it?
That's
She drove a station wagon. Was it a Woody?
No,
It was
that's-
a station wagon
It was
though,
an
I remember,
Aspen.
and she would just literally let it roll down the hill because
Save
there's
gas.
no gas money. And I remember when I learned that I was really amazed, and I think it was part of the reason why Sister Karen smoked so many cigarettes. I mean, she didn't eat much. When you don't have a lot of money, boy, it becomes coffee and cigarettes, and that was Karen, coffee and cigarettes. Because she didn't have a lot of money. I mean, the convent basically had her on, bread and water. And she put all of her time and all of her energy into self-help graphics. It was everything to her. It was her whole life. And one funny thing that I do remember about Karen is that her favorite movies were Tarzan, Johnny Weissmuller, Tarzan. She loved Johnny Weissmuller, Tarzan movies. God only knows why. I never got into a philosophical conversation with her about that. I remember my arguments with Karen were either about spiritual issues or administrative issues. Because Karen loved meetings that just from me, by the time she was done with the meeting, I was ready to either commit homicide or suicide. I wasn't really quite sure. The meetings were just so long and so intense. Sometimes we would go through a week of a meeting, every day. A strategic planning stuff. Oh, I was just ready to decide.
Yeah, and then
Bust up.
she would, she loved the community, so she would want to be, she started wanting to be everything to everybody. And you'd get these people that come in there and go, okay, well, sister, self-help graphist has to do this, self-help graphist has to do that. So, and then she would just be frantic afterwards, you know. So then, we had a conversation. I said, you can't do that, So we strategized, and then so next time this group comes in, they're like, they're all young brown rebels, And she goes, okay, and self-help has to do this. Okay, so you two be in charge of the funding. You figure out how to write the grant, and then these people would never come back.
That's right. Yeah, that's
Otherwise, because she wanted to do everything, and then pretty soon they go, oh, well, we're gonna have to work for this.
Yeah.
I have to say, I think Sister Karen, I think one of the things that was really important for me in terms of, because she was a mentor for us, I think in many ways,
Groundbreaking.
right? And like I said, even she's a very passionate human being, and so there was there was always like the positive, and then there was also, I wouldn't call it the negative, but it was contentious sometimes, but I think in a way of growing,
Yeah.
and she taught me really how to teach children, because I think a lot of artists, I would remember too, artists would come in sometimes and they want to teach children, like you teach a formal drawing class
Right.
to adults, and teach them how to draw,
Classic formulas.
yes, and imperfection and realism and representation, and children don't want to do that. So Karen really emphasized, teaching the children with their own spirit, from their spirit, right? And just doing, I think that was really important. And I know that when I was working with the other artists too, she really would emphasize that to us, that you had to really work with children from their, place, right, and perspective, and where,
And then also,
honor their spirit.
she would, I remember I taught sculpture on the van, and I'd say, well, I got to do something out of plaster. She goes, no, use something else. So she spared no expense on the van. I remember I would sculpt with alabaster,
Wow.
and then at one point I was teaching them jewelry making. So I went to a bead place and got, boku, tons of the best beads there. So she wanted us to show, you want to, one of her things was you negotiate and you approach it from a position of power, so that these little kids don't feel downtrodden. They're working with the best. So that was one of the ways that she did it. Because remember, inside the van, they taught photography. Silk screening was incredibly sophisticated to be teaching it out on the road.
Yeah.
So it was, and then we had some of the best artists in the hood teaching.
I know one of the things we did, we were still at the old building, and we went to Griffith Junior High School, but we didn't have a lot of money then, and I had to figure out something for sculpting, because I was doing the sculpting thing, and I said, gee, these are junior high school students, they have a very short attention span, and I gotta really grab these kids. So I asked Sister Karen, I got an idea, how about I make a big, a 10-foot sandwich, whatever it was, 10-foot subway thing. So, and we would call it food art, food sculpture, I think we'd say. So we bought a bunch of bologna, bought a bunch of, all the things, lettuce, tomatoes, everything. And it got me across the street, the bakeries were there. So I asked them, can you make me a I think it was a 6-foot long
Loaf of bread.
loaf of bread. They even put it on a little board for me and they wrapped it up.
You invented the.
So we took it,
Submarines.
we took it to Griffith Junior High School, and the kids loved it. I mean, they just, cause they were gonna eat at the same time. They were cutting their bread and putting all the stuff in there, and they're chopping their slices for everybody, and everybody ate.
Edible sculpture.
That was the closest. I didn't have any idea what we were gonna do.
I kind of remember something about process. You made me think about process. Correct me if I'm wrong. I remember that we used to go into a school every day for a week. Mike, is this how you
Yeah.
remember it?
It was
would
the
go in
same school.
The same
Same
school,
school.
we would drive up to the school, and we would be with the same classroom
Yeah,
every
right.
day for a
Wow.
week.
Yeah, but there was one day we'd have off, I think it was Wednesday or something, I don't know about you guys.
Something like
We had
that.
one day off to cure the clay or do whatever.
Do whatever
it
we
was.
had in between,
Yeah,
right?
to work into the studio, we worked into the studio at that
So
time.
we would work with 2 classrooms a week. Now I'm thinking them through a little bit carefully. We would do the same classroom every day that we were at that school in the morning hours. So we would have them for like 3 hours in the morning. Then we'd have like a lunch break, because I remember we'd stop and eat or go to a local restaurant. And then we'd have a different classroom in the afternoon, but we'd have them every day. So in terms of silkscreen, I remember the process now is that we would cut a stencil every day and print it every day. So by the end of the week, if there was 5 days, we would have a silkscreen, 2 silkscreen prints with 5 colors apiece. And we would use a different type of stencil process every day. So like we would cut one and use a negative, the next time we'd use the positive pieces of paper that were left over. Then we did like the drawing with the glue, and then we did the resist with the glue around the glue. So it was like a series of different stencil processes and a series of different colors, so that at the end of every week that we worked at a school, we'd end up with 2 prints from 2 different classrooms. And the teacher had to let that group of students go out and be without morning classes all week. And Sister Karen had to negotiate that with the schools, because this was all brand new. As I recall, we didn't have a contract with LAUSD. We just had contracts with individual schools.
Right.
Marty, do you remember that?
Cut.
Was it?
Switch your tape. That's, we'll.
Yeah, I'd like to just finish
We'll
this
carry on
process,
on that
because I think that's
question.
kind of a good thing to remember.
Pass me another piece of pizza.
I'd like
More
a
pizza.
Pizza
I want a piece of pepperoni,
A
please.
stretch.